All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Alchemy podcast. I'm really excited, curious, interested, engaged on our conversation today. But I'm here with a good friend, absolute dog at Vivint, Jake Robles. Jake, welcome on, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So you're fresh off a big summer, and it seems from my perspective, right? Because I'm in the industry, but I'm not, because I do a lot of, obviously you're part of Alchemy and we do a lot of coaching and consulting. So I'm not like in the trenches, but from my perspective, it seems like you have a really strong reputation of just like being, top performer. I mean, where'd you finish this year numbers wise?
Our team did 4,000 accounts and then I sold 420 personally.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like 1% of the 1% numbers. And my like initial gut feeling is like people will tune into this thinking like, oh, Jake, like I want to hear his sales techniques and his strategies and whatnot. And having worked with you, I mean, it's very clear from my end that it's not really about the pitch and how to overcome objections and the words you say. And it's been really cool to watch you, especially last year versus this year, really tune into, the whole person paradigm, right? Physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and how by you taking kind of care of those buckets, you're able to see a massive increase in production and endurance and overall quality of life and living too. So walk us kind of through that. So 2 years ago, what were your numbers 2 years ago?
I sold 200 my first year.
200?
We did like 1,300 downline.
Yeah.
My first year at Vivint.
Mm-hmm. And then what was, kind of walk us through the timeline real quick. 200 and 1,300.
Yeah. Year two, basically doubled everything.
Yep. So this was your second year at Vivint?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this just, and you only been at Vivint for 2 years.
Yeah.
That's right. Because you were doing pests before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So basically doubling your production in a year. I'm curious for you, what were the biggest thing? What are the most effective things you did that moved the needle the most?
Yeah.
On that piece, because there was a big shift with you in the last year.
It took a long time for me to understand that it really wasn't the pitch. It really wasn't learning how to close properly. It wasn't what to say, how to say it. I remember like when I'd have people come shadow me, like my leaders, they would pinpoint every single thing, like, oh, you need to talk slower, you need to do this, you need to do this. And so my entire first part of my career was all about just like trying to learn how to get really good at sales, when in reality, it's like until I understood that all of the external stuff that I was battling inside was what was going to take me to the next level, I was able to like really tap into that. And I feel like in this industry, your weaknesses get exposed really, 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 really hard. And so I went through a lot of phases where, like, if someone were to say, what's the secret sauce, right? I would just say right off the bat, don't give up and be conscious of where you're actually struggling. And the quicker you can get away from that it is the pitch, it's not the pitch, the quicker you can actually tap into like where you need to go. And so, and life will give you a bunch of reasons, whether it's, here, let me just mess up your health on purpose so you can learn that your health is important. Let me mess up your anxiety to the point where you're so anxious that you feel like you have a problem and you need to go get on medication, to the point where it's like, okay, you need to learn how to handle that. And so the biggest thing I would always tell people is like, be super conscious of where this job exposes you. And so a story I had this summer was, I was so obsessed with winning. It got to the point where come like August, the mindset is always like people burn out, people slow down. And my mindset was like, hey, I'm really close to the top spot. I wanted to be the top rep of Vivint so bad. Come August, I actually went to the hospital for 10 days. And it was all because I wasn't taking care of my health. And for me, I looked at it in the sense of like, oh, we're just going to be tough. We're just going to thug it out. I'm good enough at sales that I can still go sell anybody. And then I was proven again for the millionth time in my career. It's like, hey, it doesn't matter how good at sales you are. It doesn't matter how confident you are. Nothing matters if your internal state is not exactly where you need it to be. And so I found myself getting so anxious where I was like having panic attacks. But I'm so grateful for it now because it's like dealing with that level of anxiety to the point where it's like you're putting yourself in the hospital because of it. It's like, thank you again. Like, here we go. And then we had another massive breakthrough to now where the mindset's like, I can handle anything. And I remember having conversations with you where it's like, you're like, just breathe it through. I'm like, well, I want it to be done right now. And you're like, well, it's gonna release when it's time for you to release. Like, it's not on your timing. And we always want things to be on our timing where it's like, I want the results right now. I want the success right now, which I'm a very impatient person, especially like for people like us in the industry, we're so competitive. And so during those phases, I was like, no, I'm just going to keep working. I'm not going to keep taking care of my health. I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to not eat food because I'm trying to work so hard. And then at one point, you're going to get a wake-up call where it's like, hey, you got to take care of your internal state or you're just never going to see the results.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about right now because really, from my experience, when I made the jump from 200 to 350, right, it was really tuning into that internal state and really tuning into the mindset piece, right? To make that leap, it's not about becoming a better salesman. It's about learning to regulate your emotions, right?
For sure.
And that seems like we did. So I'm curious for you, like, what do you think the source of your anxiety was, right? You were so anxious, right? Because I remember you would call me and you're like, bro, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. Like, relax, chill, relax, release, hang out. You're gonna be okay. What do you think that source and what was the main driver of you feeling so overwhelmed and anxious?
So I think to like try to be as relatable as possible, it would come down to like top performer or not, we still wake up every single day not knowing if we can do it again and not knowing if we can actually pull off what we think we can pull off. I would always post on my stories to try to hold myself accountable, like, hey, we're going to pull off these crazy numbers. And then I'm putting myself in a position where it's like, okay, I'm kind of overwhelmed and it's not going my way, but it's not going my way because that's the way it's supposed to be. And so trying to control it too much and trying to control the results way too much instead of understanding that like really nothing, the results don't matter. All that matters is like how you feel inside. And so I got to the point where I was just trying to control it so heavily where it's like, okay, if I just skip the lunches, I don't eat, I don't take care of my health, I don't get the sleep that I need, then I'm just going to I'm going to feel like a savage because I can just pull it off. But the anxiety came from, it went into a dark path where it's like, oh no, I just have a problem now, and I think that's a big takeaway. Whereas a lot of people, when they aren't seeing the results or they're getting the anxious or they have the lack of confidence, it's always, I have a problem, I have a personal problem, and I can't fix it. It's just who I am. And so not giving up and understanding that when you are experiencing these things, it's like this is what helps you separate yourself to a whole nother level because everybody gives up. And everybody says like they call it the 1% for a reason. To me, the 1% means like you can go through the storm over and over and over and over and understand that the time will pass and you will see the diamonds on the other side of it. I remember going through like this job will put you through hell.
It will trigger you.
Yeah.
It'll expose your deepest, where you have personal work, whether you deal with anxiety, frustration, feeling like you crave validation, whatever your insecurities of why you don't think you're enough, like your deepest, darkest wounds get exposed in this job very fast.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so, but no, the anxiety problem, and I went through it all. I was like, okay, it's a health. People are telling me, no, I would go to the hospital. They're like, you're perfectly healthy. You just are dehydrated. I'm like, bro, I'm not dehydrated. I have some kind of problem. Like, check me out. And then it got to the point where there were times where I would put so much effort into learning how to control my anxiety, which all that comes down to is like letting go and loving the anxiety, because once you go through enough pain over and over and over and over, like you have so much faith that on the other side of it, it's going to be so beautiful.
Yeah, it reminds me of, my favorite quote that I'm really sitting with right now from Dr. Jack Kornfield. And he says, you can't stop the waves from coming, but you can learn how to surf. And what that means is we, as human beings, we can't stop fear, anxiety, stress, overwhelm from coming, right? It's going to be a part of our lives forever, but we can learn how to surf those waves. And as we talk about all the time, you can learn how to handle the anxiety, right? So when normally like anxiety comes, it's such an uncomfortable emotion. No one likes to feel anxiety. It's not pleasant, right? And so what we do is like, how do I get rid of this? I'm feeling anxious. I don't want to feel anxious. What can I do to not feel anxiety? And what we do is we push it away and we suppress it, and we just get, and you said, as you said, we try and control it, and just makes our life such a mess that maybe we end up in the hospital.
Right.
Right. When the highest way is living is actually learning, I'm feeling anxious. That's okay. I'm going to surrender to it. I'm going to relax behind it, and it will go away when it's ready.
For sure.
And that's what keeps you aligned. And so what was, obviously you went very extreme in the hospital. What were some of the ways you learned how to handle your anxiety more effectively?
It's definitely having good people in my life.
Yeah.
Right. Getting reminders, because everybody looks at top performers like they just have it. They just got it. And they don't understand that you ask and you pray and you want all these great things. And something that Alex Hormozy talks about, and it's like one of my favorite things he says, if you wanted to create, if God said, okay, I want to create the most perfect, most savage human being, he has to go through the pain. He has to go through the struggle. And so it really just came down to trying to control it so hard because I was so attached to the results. And
so what is, let's get specific there. What does trying to control it tactically look like? Like, what would that actually look like? You trying to control the situation. What are some of the actual things you were doing that were actually making it more messy?
Yeah. So you talk about like the breath work, you talk about like the cold plunges, right? Every single external thing is going to fix your problem, right? We're trying to use every single external thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to cut out caffeine. I'm going to start eating steak only. I'm going to start fasting. I'm going to start getting better sleep. And then at some point you're going to realize like these things are great. They're beautiful, but the external problems is the reason you have the internal problem. And when you're attached to the external problems, like your internal problem is you're not going to get fixed. And so for me, the biggest thing that helped me like finally break through was like truly like falling in love with my anxiety, and like, it's okay to feel anxious. Yeah. And I'm grateful to feel anxious, and having so much, I want to say almost like childlike faith to know that, hey, I'm praying to pull off things that aren't even comprehensible to people. Where it's like, in this industry, when you start winning at a high level, it's like, this guy's cheating, this guy's doing this guy's doing this. It's like, no. We're suffering to the point where it's like, a lot of people will just sell their souls in the sense of like, okay, I'm dealing with anxiety. I go to the doctor. I'm like, oh, I got chronic anxiety. I can't even breathe. I can't even eat my food. They're like, okay, take a Xanax. They're like, you just need to do all these external things, right? But in reality, it really just comes down to understanding and having childlike faith that if you're going to ask to pull off stuff that is not comprehensible to people and pull off the impossible, that's just part of the experience and part of the journey. And people give up way too soon. And giving up doesn't just mean like, oh, I quit my job and I'm going to go find something else. Giving up means like, I'm going through these things so deeply that I'm just going to do every single thing external to get rid of it. When in reality, the real hard work is not doing the cold plunges. It's not doing the breath work. It's doing the internal work and being conscious enough, like, where is it coming from, and learning how to love it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's so profound, man. It's like, I remember massive shifts in my life when I got into the inner work, right? And inner healing, right? It has like this like soft woo-woo connotation, and it's fluffy. And I used to think like, oh, like that's for hippies. Like that's soft. Like, don't be a pussy,
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh my gosh, this is the most important thing you can do in your life.
Right.
Because there's this inner, I say most people and a lot of guys in sales and girls they're just at war with themselves. Like every day there's this big internal battle of, I should be doing this and I need to be selling more and why am I not enough and why are my deals canceling and I gotta, and it's just, you're fighting with yourself. And when you create that much resistance internally, you're not able to like find that flow state where deals come so natural. Cause like, I mean, one thing that I admire you about, Jake, is you were able to find the flow in times. And I remember there were days where like, oh, I'm selling, 40, 50 this week.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Like those are numbers I never touched. Right.
Yeah.
And so what are some things you would do specifically, because if you're selling 40 in a week, your internal state is that flow, right? Doesn't mean it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's still hard. You still have difficult things to do. Like knocking all day is difficult, but the inner experience doesn't have as much resistance, right? You think about times when you were feeling a lot of inner resistance and you weren't okay with yourself and you weren't at ease, you end up in the hospital.
Right.
Because you're like literally like there's two forces just like fighting each other. And so when you're able to open up to that place, right? And that's the difference in my experience, every elite performer I know is able to do that, right? Is to really just control their inner state or surrender to their inner state. And so what are some actual practices, right, that you do specifically, whether they're thought experiments or mantras or meditations or breath works, like what are some things you do to actually kind of get back to your center so that you can then work from that state and can ride that flow throughout your day?
I think it's all a mindset thing, and it's the mindset difference of using every single external thing to try to fix it compared to when I am going through these external battles, the external things are not going to fix it, and it comes down to understanding like this is just part of the journey. This is like you have to just accept it and surrender. And people get the surrender part wrong. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just going to surrender to like, this is how I'm feeling. And, but basically what you're still doing at that point is attaching to your mind of basically saying, okay, I'm feeling this way. So I'm just going to tell myself I'm okay, which in an example is that's still your internal battle fighting it instead of just like, yo, I feel anxious. I'm going to do the best with what I got. And really being in a mindset of no matter how I feel, I'm going to give my best because sometimes I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be terrible. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to look people in the eyes. Sometimes I'm going to be way too nervous. I'm going to be in a position where I'm on a doorstep and the anxiety is so bad that I'm trying to control it so hard that I can't even talk to people. But being willing to just like go through the pain and do your best with what you have in that exact moment and stop trying to control it and stop fighting with your mind like, oh, I'm just going to surrender to it. It's like, yeah, you're going to surrender to it, but you're telling yourself you have one of your mind saying, okay, I'm dealing with this anxiety. Then you have the other part of your mind that's like, no, I'm just going to surrender to it, which is a conflict in your mind is you attaching to it as a whole.
I want to share something on that because I just heard a phenomenal analogy on this. And I think it'd be really, really helpful because what you're saying is really profound. So there's basically 4 ways we can respond to a situation. The bottom 2 are going to make your life really messy and it's going to make hard and it's going to create a lot of chaos. The third way is good, but then the fourth way is actually the highest way of living. So the lowest level way to respond to a situation is expression. So I'll name them all 4, and then I'll give you an example of how they work through, so everyone can learn from this. So the lowest level is expression. The second lowest level is suppression. The third level is acceptance. So a lot of people think like acceptance is a high state.
Right.
It's a higher state.
Right.
But the highest state is surrender.
Right.
So here's the analogy. Let's say you've got a big meeting with an important person downtown in this massive office building, and your meeting's on the 100th floor and you're running a little bit late. And so you're feeling a little nervous, a little cautious, a little frustrated a little bit. And so you get into this elevator and you hit floor number 100 and there's someone next to the buttons. And every time the door is about to close, they hit the open button. And then the door is about to close and then they hit the open button. And then the door is about to close and then they hit the open button, right? So let's go through those 4 states. Lowest level of response, expression. That's going to be, hey, you dumbass, why do you keep hitting the door open? What are you doing? Are you stupid? Like, oh my gosh, I have to, like, and it's like this external energetic expression.
Right.
Where you're going to get frustrated, you're going to yell, you're going to get angry. This is wrong. You're doing it wrong. Right. And that's going to create a really unpleasant inner experience. Right. So lowest level is expression. Second lowest level, suppression. That means he hits the elevator button, that it's going to get really weird in there. Like you're going to be thinking names. What is this guy doing? Oh my gosh. And you're going to hold it all in and you're going to boil it all up and you're going to be really not having a good time inside.
Sure.
Majority of people live almost their whole lives in those bottom two.
Yeah.
It's like freaking out on someone and expressing out on someone, or this shouldn't be this way, or losing it, or you holding it all in and you let it boil and boil and boil. You're not able to think clearly. So misconception is people think that acceptance is a really, really high state. It's a higher state, but it's not the highest. But to your point, like you just said, it was really profound. Acceptance is saying, this guy shouldn't be doing this. It's bothering me. It makes me upset. He's holding the elevator door open, but I'm going to be above it and I'm going to accept it. But what happens is there's still like this inner resistance. It shouldn't be this way, but I'm going to get on top of it, but it shouldn't be this way, but I'm going to be above it.
Right.
But there's still the flow isn't clean.
Still the attachment to ego for sure.
The flow isn't clean. So what's the highest way? It's surrender. What is surrender? Is you use that moment to go to God.
Right.
And it's, I accept reality. Like I am okay with this moment. And you relax and you allow because your mind's still going to freak out. Doesn't mean this is going to go away, but you relax behind it and you allow it to just move through you and you work with it. I'm anxious, I'm frustrated. That's okay. And you just kind of relax and you lean away from it. And over time, then it literally leaves and it's no longer inner disturbance. And if people could figure that out to what you're saying, life would be so beautiful. Like you would be clear, you'd be full of energy, you'd be enthusiastic, you'd be full of love, you'd be full of hope, and you would have endurance to work. You could knock doors all day, every day for 3 years straight with no off season if you could do this, because there isn't this, to your point, there isn't this internal war going on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really, really profound. And I think you nailed it on the head there. It's like true surrender. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean quitting. It doesn't mean surrendering to someone. It doesn't mean be a doormat. It doesn't mean don't do anything. It means you have to get behind the energy, just like you were saying, get behind the energy, relax. It does move through you. The anxiety does go away. And then once you're clear and you're centered and you're there, now go engage. Now go do something about it.
Right. Yeah, I think people just don't understand. For something that Andrew Tate talks about, which I like a lot, is you gotta have mental models that really work for you. And so for me, and it took me a long time to understand this, it's like these high performers are just different. But in reality, the high performers just understand what's important, and what's really important is. And what honestly, all that matters outside of like relationships, a relationship with God, like what really matters the most is how you feel inside. And so you go through these mindsets of like, okay, I'm just going to do affirmations, tell myself I'm confident, it's going to make me feel better inside, which again is just another attachment, because internally within us, we already have the most powerful state that we can possibly experience, and you're not going to get there by trying to fight it. And you gotta look at life as it is all part of the experience. And when you are going through the suffering is just another part of the experience. And if you can surrender, like you say, surrender really means like, I'm just gonna do the best with what I got. Like this is just how it is.
Yeah, I would say surrender is I am okay with what happens.
For sure.
Not that I agree with it, not that it's right or moral or just or integrity, but I accept, I'm okay. Like this is the reality of life.
Yeah.
I have to go knock doors for 12 hours. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I do agree that people get to the accepted state and so they feel a little bit better.
Yeah, it is better. It's higher.
Right. So they get to the accepted state where it's like, okay, fine, I'm just going to accept how I feel and it's fine. But you got to not accept it. You got to love it.
Yeah. Well, because to your point, you said it like, I have to knock doors and it's fine. What that means is there's actually at your core a different preference.
Yep.
I prefer life to be a different way.
Yep.
And it's not, but I'm going to be above it, right? And that still creates that inner resistance.
When you're really surrendered, I mean, and you really are in the flow state, you don't experience those.
Truly.
You're just experiencing
Life,
everything for as
creation.
it is. Yeah.
You're experiencing creation for the reality that it is.
If we could tap into the flow state 24/7, I mean, we would be unstoppable human beings. But at the end of the day, it's like if you're gonna ask and pray to get to the next level, like it's just part of the experience. You have to go through it.
Yeah.
And so learning to like the biggest fight people will deal with is the acceptance fight and thinking that that's where they're okay. But where you're really okay is where you can tap in to being fully surrendered, and like we just do the best with what we got.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I do, as I've built Alchemy, I've been taking, especially recently, there's been a lot of new clients coming in, right? We've been around for, almost 3 years now, a lot of top performers, the word's kind of getting out that this is a really effective program. And it's always really interesting because when I take a discovery, call to see if someone is interested in being part of the program, I'm very direct with them, and it kind of catches people off guard. And I'll just say, hey, listen, I'm not in the business to help you get what you want. I'm also not in the business to help you avoid what you don't want.
Yeah.
Most people live their whole life. How do I get what I want? How do I avoid what I don't want? And I always ask, how does that go for you? Not very good, right? So there's wins and there's losses and it's chaotic. What I'm interested in, and this is exactly what you're saying, I love it. What I'm interested in is how do we turn you into the type of person that regardless of how life unfolds, you're okay and you can handle it.
Right.
That's actually the highest state you want to go.
Right.
Because if you can wake up in the morning and you're like, hey, it's another day. I'm floating on a rock in the middle of space. No one knows what's going on. Life is going to unfold today. I can't predict it. I can't control it, but I can handle whatever life brings me today.
Yeah.
I can totally handle it. And I'm okay. I'm okay. I can handle that. And if you can get to that state, that's when you see people literally like exponentially explode financially, physically, emotionally with their relationships because they're not trying to force and manipulate and get everything to be the way that they want it. And they fight with themselves and they fight with life. They're able to actually engage with life and respond to life appropriately because their inner state, you talk about your inner state so much, their inner state is good.
Yeah.
And that I literally think that's the difference between an average performer and an elite performer.
A lot of people's like especially when they first get into the industry, any industry, it's like, I have to learn how to work like a savage. I have to learn how to build all this unconditional confidence. But what people don't understand is it's already there.
Yeah.
And it's already within you, and you have to learn how to tap into that. And so when I'm trying to give people advice, it's always comes down to how do you get yourself into that flow state to tap into what's already in there, because it is.
Yeah. I truly believe, and this is like my message with the world as we grow Alchemy. The secret is this. There is and I know you've touched this, there is an infinite ball of expansive, full, loving, enthusiastic, joyful, excited, confident, expressive energy that's always inside of you. It's always there.
Yep.
What happens is we block it because we have preferences and we have concepts and we need this girl to like us and we need to make $1 million and I need to drive this car. And if I don't have that yet, and then because I don't have that yet, I got to work for it and grind. And then by doing all of this, we block that. But reality is, to your point, it's already within you. We just have to remove all of the things blocking it. And if we just remove them, naturally, what will happen is we'll tap into that flow and we'll start living from that state.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's I think, like, to me, it's like the world's biggest secret.
Yeah. I think for me, like a hard thing for people to like believe it is they haven't tapped into it.
Well, I actually have a really good example on how to tap into. So for people listening, how do you know if you've tapped into it? Here's my favorite analogy, right? Are you a sports fan?
Sure.
Like
big UFC fan.
UFC,
fan,
yeah. So UFC, right? Who's your favorite fighter? McGregor. You're like, McGregor's your guy, right? So let's say McGregor it's the I don't know UFC well, but let's say it's like the main event, he's going for the title, right? And who would be like a really fun competitor for him?
Dustin Poirier.
Say it again.
Dustin Poirier.
Dustin Poirier, right? So let's say it's McGregor and Dustin, right? How are you feeling as they're coming in the walkouts? Like you're watching it with your boys. How are you feeling during walkouts?
The energy's insane.
Yeah, you're feeling it, right?
Right.
You're at home. You might be at home watching it at TV, and you feel a difference of energy.
Right.
Right. The match starts. Right. Conor McGregor goes right up to him, does like this flying knee, knocks him out within 10 seconds. What happens to your energy?
We're going crazy.
Yeah. Like, what are you doing physically?
We're jumping. We're excited. We're happy.
Yeah. You're excited. You're feeling good. You're feeling confident. Would you be pleasant to be around the rest of the day?
100%.
Yeah. Right. Where did that energy come from?
It's always within you.
Right. It was life unfolded exactly the way I wanted it to. And so the blockages were removed because your preferences, you got what you preferred. And then you tapped into this incredible, enthusiastic energy that you're going to ride all night, and you're going to feel confident, and you might go out to the bars and you're going to have a little bit more confident to hit on the cute girl, right? It's because you tapped into what was already there. You didn't take an adrenaline shot. You didn't chug a Red Bull. Life just unfolded exactly the way you wanted it to.
Right.
And you tapped into this flow.
Yeah.
Right. To the opposite, let's say the opposite happened. McGregor just gets knocked out really fast. Right. What happens to your energy?
You're bummed.
You're bummed.
Yeah.
You close off. You close off because life didn't happen the way you wanted it to. So you close off. You're not as enthusiastic. You're not as pleasant to be around. You're a little more, anxious. You're a little bit more annoyed. You're a little bit more soft and, fragile because life didn't unfold the way you wanted it to. And so I love the analogy with sports, especially with, mostly the men in the group, because it gives you a very clear example of when life happens exactly the way I want it to, you actually tap into that energy and you can ride that wave.
Yeah.
Right. And so the whole purpose and intention behind all this is just like you can actually tap into that and feel that way all the time.
Yeah. Similar analogy that I've heard is like there's people that like convince themselves they're chronically depressed, right? But if you look at it from a perspective, it's like you can't get out of bed, you can't get to the gym, which you need to because it's the only thing that's going to help you. And then your family has cancer, they're struggling financially, and then one day you wake up and your family's cancer is gone and you just won the lottery. And now you can save your life. The energy is going to be a lot different.
Yeah.
And so, but people need to understand, and I would like your advice on it as well. It's like, how do people even understand how powerful that energy is? Because I feel like the reason that people will not commit their lives to their internal being because they don't understand how powerful they really are and how they can come to it.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I think if you peel back the layers enough, every decision we make is based upon how we think it will make us feel.
Right.
You don't want the Porsche convertible. You don't want it.
Yeah.
What you want is the feeling of how cool it'll be to have the Porsche convertible and being in, LA and picking up your date and driving down Sunset Boulevard, during sunset with your favorite music playing. That's what you want, that feeling, right? That's why you get the cars. You want the feeling. So you don't want the thing, you want the feeling you think that will bring. Bottom line, the quality of your life is directly correlated to your emotion, the emotions you feel the most during the day.
How do you get people to understand that you don't need those things to feel okay?
So it's not, and here's just another caveat to it. It's not that those things are bad. It's not saying don't go get those things.
Right.
It's just not correlated. It's just a different equation. Happiness is an internal experience, right? Material possessions are an external experience, right? I'm all for making money and building a business and being successful and having, I love cool stuff. I love going on, right after this podcast, I'm going to LA for the week to go have fun, right? But I know that that's not going to make me happy. My happiness is 100% my responsibility. And you cannot fix an internal problem with something external.
Right.
External things are external things. They're great. Not against them, right? internal things are different. And so that's my responsibility. And so I think kind of the first step in making that change is really cementing that concept that your inner state dictates your outer experience, right? You're going to respond to life and interact with life based upon your inner state. Nothing externally is going to make you feel better. And here's a very extreme example, but what do Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, and Robin Williams have in common?
What?
They all committed suicide. Kate Spade, world-renowned fashion designer, stores all over New York and LA, multimillionaire, right? Anthony Bourdain, his job was to travel the world, eat good food, and go to cool places.
Yeah.
And he had a TV show about it. That was his job. Robin Williams in the 90s was the guy. A-list celebrity, every major movie, was beloved by millions. He was the funniest comedian. Like, people beloved him. All committed suicide. Because, right, they were expecting in some capacity and, that they were relying on external circumstances to make them feel okay internally. And so that's a very extreme, intense example, right? But the point is to get the point across that, like, I always ask people, most people live their lives that if I get what I want, then I'll be happy. But have you ever realized, especially in this job, it's really tell because we make money so early, right? Have you ever realized that once you get what you want, you don't really want it anymore?
For sure. I experienced it this summer. I remember, like, right when I got home, it's like I pulled off the impossible and it's like I'm still suffering. Yeah. It's like, what else is it? Like, what? And even though we understand that it is all the internal state, you can have everything. And I like to look at it in a sense of, like, you can't ask for more and more and more and more and not expect to just go through phases of life where you're suffering. And I remember, like, this year, like, I pulled off things that I didn't believe was possible, that other people didn't believe was possible. And I remember getting home, laying in bed for the first time, and I'm like, I'm still suffering. Like, why? How does this make any sense? Like, I have everything. I can have all the women. I have all the money. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I have good relationships. And so just looking at things, it's like, hey, there's still more to tap into inside, and you have to be willing to go through the experience to get there. Once you can, that's the first part of the acceptance of it, right? That can get you to a higher state, which is the state that most people get stuck into, is like, I'm okay, I'll be okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and, I think suffering too, I heard a really good definition of it, and it was the reason you suffer is because life isn't happening the way you think that it should.
Yeah.
Period. Right. And if you really break that down, right, where did you get your concepts of how you think life should be? Well, it's based upon all of your previous experiences.
For sure.
I mean, I'm talking about all of them, from elementary school and the music you listened to and the movie you watched after you got your heart broken and the way the guy cut you off on the street and what your mom said to you when she was mad. Like, we build all of these models of how life has been based upon our experiences. And here's what's crazy. Your experiences of life are so incredibly different than everyone else's. No two people even remotely close have had the same inner experiences, right? And we build the data as we grow up. Like, this is how my mom is, and this is how my dad is, and this is how my teachers treated me, and this is what my coach in football was mean to me or whatever. And so we build up all of these mental constructs of reality, and everyone's is so different. It's crazy how different they are, right? And then we go out into the world and say, this is how life should be. When really life is under no obligation to be any way that you want.
For sure.
And then we go out and suffer. There's 8 billion people on planet Earth. There's 8 billion different points of view. And we're all on one arena on Earth. Yeah. And then we just fight with each other.
I used to use an analogy all the time, like when I'm trying to, like, share it to people around me. I'm like, hey, if you get in a car wreck, is that a bad thing? And they're always going to say, yeah, that's a bad thing. I'm like, okay. And now, so that's a bad thing that you get in a car wreck. You're stressed about it. And now it's to the point where you don't have money and you need to make money. And now you're on the doors. You're not seeing results. And then when you're on the doors, you have to make money because you need to pay for your car that just got fixed. But when you look at it logically, it's like, how does that serve you at all? And so once you can really understand that like you being so attached to everything externally doesn't serve you, and you're going to suffer because of it, and it's not going to help you perform. Once people get to the point where they're suffering so much, that's when the change will start. But and people don't understand that you have to go through the pain to do that.
Yeah, and I think people make changes based upon two situations. Or it's either they have a breakthrough, a big experience, they fall in love, or something really life-changing emotionally happens, and it's like, wow, this feels so good, I want to stay here, right? What is this state that's going on? Or it's too painful to stay the same. Like life gets so painful that they're forced to change.
Yeah.
Right. And so both situations, you're going to get you in the same spot of like really learning how to work with that. And I would say this too, like I can tell you why everyone you know has anxiety. There's two reasons. There's something that I want and I'm afraid I'm not going to get it. Or there's something that I don't want to have happen and I'm afraid that it will.
Yeah.
That's anxiety.
You have to almost get to the point of, like, people say you got to be fearless, but you got to get to the point of fearless where it's like I'm fearless of death to that point. I remember for me, like what really jumped me into and this is like when I started reading your book too, which was crazy, but I remember going through like a breakup where I never in a million years thought I would have broke up. It's your first love, you know, that type of pain, right? I remember when we broke up, I'm laying in my bed and I'm like the least suicidal, depressed. I've never experienced anxiety, never had depression. I mean, when you're young, you're just experiencing life. You don't even look at things that way. You know, it's like, oh, something bad happened, but the next day you're totally chilling. And I remember laying in bed thinking to myself, I'm like, well, it's either suicide or drugs because I can't handle this pain. Like I couldn't get out of bed. And so the pain was so unbearable. I remember for me, like what really broke me through was getting myself to a place mentally where I was so willing to be so fearless of anything that happened that it helped me break through. And so for me, I would start going to the cold plunges, but I would go into the water for 3 minutes. My mind is telling me like, yo, you're going to die. Your brain is like, you're going to freeze your brain. And in my mind, the suffering was so unbearable that it's like, I would get in the water, I would do the Wim Hof, and I would go into the water for 3 minutes and say, I'm willing to die because the pain was so unbearable that I was like, I will do anything to get rid of this pain. And so when I started when I started like tapping into other levels, there were times when I'd get out and I'd be like, holy shit, I'm so powerful. And the hardest thing that people got, like, I feel like for people to understand is experiencing how powerful you really are. And people will not commit their lives to their internal state until they understand how powerful they really are.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think the big shift for me too on that note was realizing that there isn't anything externally I needed to find to make me be better.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there. I didn't go find anything. Like everything that I want and desire is within. And I just have to get rid of everything that's blocking that.
Yeah. And we've all been through it where it's like, okay, I don't feel loved. It's like, okay, well, let me just go date women so I can feel loved. Or it's like, I don't feel worthy, so let me go buy these nice things so that I can feel good inside. But over time, I mean, you learn your lesson that it's like, no matter, you could have everything and you can still suffer inside.
Well, I think too on that, like you think about like love, right? It's so funny the way we are as humans. It's like, I don't feel loved, so I'll go out and try and find someone who will love me. When really the highest way of living is like, if you don't feel love, learn to feel love yourself. What you want is the feeling of love. If you feel fully loved, like full of love and enthusiasm and at ease and connection, like truly full of love, you will not want a partner. You won't, let me rephrase that. You won't need a partner.
You'll be okay without it.
You're good without one. And here's what happens. If you are good without a partner, it's not going to take very long, and you'll have to fight women off with a stick.
Yeah.
Right? Because what do people want? That's what people want, is they want that feeling of love and connection and enthusiasm. You know, my favorite, this is my bar. I'm single right now, and it's either this or not, or I'm going to stay single the rest of my life. And if I stay single the rest of my life, I'm totally fine. I live a great life. Like I'm truly okay. But true love is when two people love themselves so much that they want to express and share that energy with each other.
For sure.
That's it. And so if you are not feeling loved and you think that a partner is going to fix that for you, good luck, right? Especially because I fell into that trap 2017. I didn't love myself. I found a partner who I really loved, and I attached my happiness to them and like, oh my gosh, I finally found the person. This is amazing. It's be good. And then what did they do? They pieced out. And then I was shattered.
For sure.
Right? And so whatever you are seeking in your life, love, happiness, connection, you are the source of what you are missing.
For sure.
So go in and ask yourself, why am I not feeling love? Why am I not feeling excited? Why am I not feeling enthusiasm? How can I actually bring that and give that to myself? And when you give that to yourself, that's what true leveling up is. And then you can actually go out and interact with the world from a place of service and expression and connection and creation and doing cool things and exciting, because you're not trying to use the external world to make you feel better and fix you.
I think that you can't even get close to tapping into a flow state until you love yourself.
Yeah.
And for me, the love for me is it's a relationship with Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And I know that no matter, because how we do things is like, okay, we don't get what we want. We're not feeling the way we want. We're not having the things that we want. We're not feeling good inside. And it's all like, okay, now let's go seek every single external thing to try to feel love. And we've all been through this phase. And then the relationships are sticky and you're hurting people for no reason. Like they say, like hurt people, right? The amount of times that I've been so hurt where I'm like, I go seek it from a woman, I sell the dream, and then subconsciously I'm like, I'm literally doing this out of selfish. I can't even like love this girl like myself. And so for me, it comes down to the relationship I have with Jesus, where it's like, no matter how convicted I feel, no matter how shitty I feel about myself, knowing that, and you can call it the universe, you can call it love, you're in the exact spot that you're supposed to be in, having unwavering childlike faith that you know that Jesus loves you no matter what. God loves you no matter what. The universe loves you no matter what, and you're going to be okay. It's hard to love yourself, you know? Like you can do all the things, you can be a great person, but unless you have an unwavering faith of that, this is exactly how it's supposed to be, which is part of the surrender again, you can't tap in. You can't even express love to people, which if your heart's blocked off, it's the worst. It's the worst place you can be. And especially when you want to love people, because like it's almost like you're mentally forcing yourself, like, okay, I'm going to be a loving person, but you can't actually. When you're really like vibrating in a frequency of love, the aura is insane. And so like where you talked about like where when you are in the mindset of I don't feel love, so I'm going to go seek it in every external way, it's like you can't attract nothing. But when you are in the frequency of God loves me no matter what, and he loves me so much that it helps me love myself, the aura that people can feel and the presence when you walk into a room, it's like you attract everything. And people don't understand how powerful that energy is. And when you can experience it and you understand that, like, if you got to commit your life, like the mental model I talk about with Andrew Tate, you have to commit your life to your internal state, because when you're committed to your life to your internal state, you can have everything. You can have anything you want.
You can have it all and you don't even care to get it.
Correct.
It's like, it doesn't even matter. It's like you are okay.
There's no attachment.
There's no attachment to it, right? And, you know, do I have goals and aspirations? Sure, right? And it's based on impact.
Yeah.
And I know that as long as I continue to surrender and relax and release and let go of everything that is blocking that flow, life just gets very smooth.
Yeah.
It's very smooth.
It's like good luck getting what you want when you're attached.
Yeah.
It's actually not possible.
No, there's a really deep Buddhist quote that says, the path is easy for those who have no preference. The path is easy for those that have no preference. And I love that, because it's like the number one thing that is blocking us from joy, from growth, from excitement, from love, from enthusiasm, right, is being so attached to life being a certain way. And here's what's crazy is it can motivate you. Like you can go out and you can grind and you can hustle and you can achieve great things, but I can't tell you how many conversations I've had especially from reps from, whether it be Solar or Vivint or whatever it may be, right? I'm like, that finished as the top office or the top rep. And I'll ask them like, how long did that feel good for? And guess what the average response was?
A day.
1 day.
Yeah.
Felt really good for 1 day. And then I woke up the next morning and I'm like, oh, I'm still the same.
And everybody wants to be in that position.
And everyone, they grit and grind and hustle and suffer and pound their head on the cement in pain for 45 minutes of joy. I'm like, guys, you can find that feeling you desire, that feeling you think where you're on top of the world and full of love and connection and I did it. That's available to everyone all the time.
For sure.
All the time. And imagine if you were in that state all the time, what would naturally happen to your production?
Yep.
It would skyrocket. Right. And so I think that's the message.
It's hard in our industry because it's like, teach me the sauce.
Yeah.
And I remember my first few years in the industry, I was the guy that would not stop picking these people's brains.
Yeah.
And now when people come to me like, yo, what's the sauce? I'm like, you just got to love. It's all
Gotta love. Well, it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up because I remember I first met you 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And you didn't join Alchemy for a year. It took you a year. You were a hard sell.
Yeah.
Why do you think that took so long?
You think you can do everything on your own?
What was the trick? Because I spoke to you twice in California.
Right.
There was the first summer I came out and spoke to you guys. And I remember you were locked in.
Yeah.
I could tell when I was doing my trainings, you were locked in. You didn't join.
Yep.
And then you finally decided last January to join. What was, what were the hesitations and how has it been since being a part of it?
I would say for most people that aren't going to join, right? So I got on the call the other day and I said one thing. The number one thing that's going to get you to the next level is your spirituality. And that's all Doug teaches. It's like, I'm not using Doug to teach me how to sell. Like, does he teach me how to sell at a high level? Did he teach me a lot? Yes. But it's like, I said one thing. The number one thing that will get you to the next level is your spirituality. And people hear this, but everybody thinks that they can do it on their own. And I was in the same boat. And so for me, the hesitation was like, I can just figure this out on my own, but you actually can't. And you have to have people around you. You have to have a good team. And like, honestly, every single day now in my life, when I'm open to it and I'm open to being willing to learn, the amount of people that come into my life that it's like, you're the biggest blessing that I've ever experienced because I was actually open to it, and the amount of growth that I've got, it's crazy. And so I would just say that like when you came and spoke, I remember we were in a market, Bakersfield, which Bakersfield is like typically should be a great market. Like there's so much Vivid there and we're just getting crushed. And you're like, okay, try this one thing, do this. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and do it. And I get results. But it's like, why am I getting the results? Is because the belief behind me is okay, well, he says this works. So I'm going to have belief that it works and I'm going to try it. But I'm trying it with an open mind of like, we're just gonna surrender to see if this works because I have to try something else because it's not working. And so you just have to be wise enough to understand you cannot do it on your own. Whether that means you have a relationship with God, whether that means you have people in your life that are gonna help you get there, you cannot do it on your own, period. And so people, and your sales pitch is like, yo, I'm going to help you get to the next level. And people are like, oh, it's just another coaching program. It's just another scheme, whatever it is. Like, let's just make some money. It's like, no. When you get to the point where you want everybody to experience it because nobody experiences it. And when they say like they call it the 1% for the reason, it's not the success. It's not these guys that are billionaires. They're the 1%. The 1% is understanding the internal spiritual place you need to be to get there. And for like your position, once you understand and you experience it, there is no better feeling in life than giving that to other people. Yeah. And people don't get that. And so I'm always gonna advise because I was that guy.
You were.
Yeah. Like to the max, right? It's like, no, I got it all figured out. I can learn it on my own. I'm going to learn it through experience, but it's like, you cannot do it on your own, period. Like you just can't.
Yeah. I always tell people I have 5 coaches myself. Like I've got a relationship coach, I have a business coach, I have a finance coach, I have a therapist, right? I've got a nutritionist and health coach. And I think too, going back to, and it's funny too, we call it Alchemy sales coaching. It's crazy. I take so many one-on-ones every day. I almost never talk about sales anymore.
Right.
Like I'm never talking about pitch. I'm never talking about overcoming objections, right? If someone asks me specifically, like, hey, I'm really struggling, like for sure, like I can lock in and, I sold over 2,000 personal accounts of Vivint, so I can train you on that capacity. But all the conversation is exactly what you're saying. It's your internal state. How do I get my inner experience to be pleasant, confident, at ease, enthusiastic, and joyful all the time?
Right.
And that will move the needle more than anything.
Yes. Something that, because Andrew Tate's like a big influencer to me. Something he says is the number one reason people are not successful is because they're arrogant. And arrogance essentially means you're not willing to learn.
You're closed off.
You're closed off.
Right. So we talked about the opening and the closing, right? With the UFC analogy, right? You're closed off.
Yeah.
I've already got it. I don't need it. I'm closed.
What people think, it's like, oh, let me text these top performers. Yo, what's the sauce? It's like, no, you need these top performers in your corner all the time.
Yeah.
Like you have to have relationships with these people.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
And so I would just say like one of the biggest advices I would give is you gotta be willing to be open to learn from other people and take the advice and quit being arrogant.
Yeah. It's huge.
Quit being arrogant. Quit being like, you say like you're going to be okay, but like you don't even love yourself enough to put yourself in positions where you do have people that can teach you.
Yeah.
You got to be around it. You have to, period. You got to have people that believe in you. You got to have people that help you with your spiritual growth. You got to have people that teach you how to sell. I have it all. And like everybody, when a lot of times when people are like, yo, what's the secret sauce? It's like, oh dude, my pitch is this. It's like, well, I tried that pitch. It's not working. It's like, it's because you don't have a team around you that can help you with your spirituality, can help you learn how to
it's the energy behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the energy behind it, man. Yeah, it's so good.
You have to have a good team.
100%. Right. Let me see this. What do you think the next version of Jake looks like? As you've already made massive leaps. Where do you think this thing's going?
Like from an external standpoint?
From an energetic standpoint.
I mean,
from an aura standpoint.
That's all I'm trying to do. The place I'm trying to get is where it's like I don't need anything. And as much as like I can say like, yo, I'm tapped in, I had the success. Obviously I've tapped in or else I wouldn't have had the success. But I'm trying to get to a point where I really can experience it for a longer period of time, because the devil works hard. And when you start winning, it's going to get harder and it's going to get darker. And so I'm just trying to get to a place where it's like I fall in love with the pain. I've gotten there before. Like my first summer at Vivint, for the first time in my career, I had people that believed in me. And I committed myself to one thing. I'm going to go through the suffering and I'm not going to quit, because I always did. And quitting doesn't just mean walking away. It means like, okay, are you still going to follow your routines? Are you still not going to sell your soul? What sell your soul means like, are you going to put stuff in your body that you know you shouldn't, right? Because that's going to get you there for a short period of time, but then you're suffering. And so, yeah, I mean, you gotta have good people around you for sure.
Well, I'm super excited to watch you continuously grow, man. I know this is just the beginning, and I feel very confident we can look back 10 years from now and we'll be living in just a completely different experience. And I feel inspired by your growth, brother, and got a lot of love for you. And thanks for coming on, man.
Of course. Thank you.
Big love.
Big love.